Before we get started, if you enjoy the show and would like to support us, we have just two things we would like you to check out. Please head to our YouTube channel and subscribe to the show. Our goal is to hit 1,000 subscribers, so we need all the help we can get.
And if you would like to take your support to the next level and get early access to the show, you can come and join us on Patreon. You'll even get a shout out at the end of the episodes. Links to both will be in the show notes.
Right then, Cam, let's get on with the show. Hello, Cam. How you doing? You all right?
I'm good, thanks, Mark. I was waiting for you to kick off there.
Well, normally you go. Yeah, the sun is shining, although I have all my blinds closed. But we've had some odd weather, haven't we? But
yeah, we have. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the sun is shining. It's looking lovely out there. It's cold, but who cares? It's cold as long as the sun's out. We're good. We're good.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes. This is actually a proper first recording in 2025. I know we did one obviously last December, but we'd kind of recorded that December, guys. Sorry about that. But yeah, so it kind of feels new. And yeah, we got obviously quite a schedule coming up, haven't we? With what we got on with work, which kind of leads us on to a story that you kind of found.
I did actually. This is a story that I found on BBC, actually, and it's about it's a wedding story, but it actually I think every working photographer will be able to relate to it, or should take note of this actual story. But the headline reads on BBC, it says, hundreds of couples lose out on wedding videos. And I'm going to read from the story. The journalist here from BBC was Rosie Blunt for BBC News South East. It says, couples have spoken of their anger, frustration and hurt after paying hundreds of pounds to a videographer who failed to send their wedding videos and did not refund the money. The BBC has seen a list of more than 100 people who are still waiting to receive their wedding video from Sarah L. Stanton, who runs a business called Wallflower Weddings, Films and Content Creation in Gillingham. It says some have been waiting for more than 2 years. And a Facebook group called Victims of Wallflower Videography, Wallflower Weddings, Film and Content, has 285 members. And it says, when contacted for comment, Miss Stanton said, those who know me know I am not a scammer. Rich Smith paid Miss Stanton £850 to film his wedding in June 2023, and he's still not received the video. And he said he had let it go a long time ago. And when the BBC approached Miss Stanton, she said she was dealing with family issues. But she said here, I honestly do not care what they, meaning her clients, or do or say now. I'm tired of trying to change people's opinions of me. And it says in a video post on her social media, Ms. Stanton uses an obscenity to describe her clients and said they were threatening to take me to court, left, right, and centre.
Well, yeah.
And further on from that, she then, reading from the actual story, she says she posted on her social media pages asking clients to send in a hard drive so that she can transfer the clients the raw, unedited footage of their weddings. She said this would be overexposed, unexposed, lots of print pointing at the floor, fumbly shots, blurry bits, etc. And in order to receive their footage, Miss Stanton has asked clients to sign a contract that absolves Wallflower Weddings Videography of editing their final film. And it also states they cannot seek compensation, including a refund or pursue legal action. And the clients have told the BBC they feel that she's holding their videos at ransom. Mm-hmm. And some who have tried to get hold of the raw footage rather than holding out for an edited version have still not received it. And it goes on from there. And there is a serious story to this. Obviously, here is a videographer who's let clients down, regardless of whether it's weddings or whether it's commercial, whether it's a fashion photographer, sports, whatever it is. This videographer has let her clients down. She's taken their money and she hasn't delivered what she promised. Okay, which I believe would be filming their wedding and giving them a final edited film.
Absolutely.
Now we could say that at the price that she's charging, around £800, around £850. Had she suddenly sort of thought, actually, this is taking me a lot longer. I'm simply overwhelmed by the amount of work that I've got on. I've filmed all these weddings, and now I've got to edit them. Somebody might say that she could outsource her editing, but that's going to cost her. So she's going to end up making next to nothing on what. And we could. There's always the thing of she should have thought about all of that beforehand in her business plan. And
do we know how long the business has been going for? I mean, I hate to put age into it, but how old is she?
I don't know.
How experienced is she?
Yeah, I didn't look into her in that much detail. And there's a reason for that, Mark, because this wasn't actually the main point of this podcast.
No, it isn't. But I think we need to discuss the overall story and then move on to what we want to talk about from this, I think. But, it's... When I went into business at the beginning, I've definitely made some mistakes. And to rectify those mistakes, I actually, in the end, lost out on money at the expense of not having a bad business reputation. Yeah. Because if I've messed up, it's not the client's fault, right? It's my fault. So actually, in her position, actually, she should get outsourced. It doesn't matter; it's going to cost her. Yeah. It depends on what she wants to do with the business, I guess. If she's thinking of, I don't know, sacking the business off, then I guess she doesn't care. But I'm sure she isn't a scammer, and I'm sure she meant to do everything, very few people go into business to sort of rip people off, I think, especially in what we do. There's a lot of chances, there's a lot of cowboys, and there's a lot of people with not a lot of experience. And I think she, by the sound of it, this is bad pricing, because she's made herself too popular. Zero thought of work balance, and that's something that we want to sort of go on to talk about in a bit, isn't it? So, workflow and making sure you have enough time, you're not taking on too much. But when you're in that position, you suddenly have to think, okay, so what's important now? What's important? Yeah, sure. So, do I want to keep this business going, and do I want this business to succeed? If that's the case, then you might have to take some short-term pain now, i.e. financially, and you might have to run up a credit card bill or whatever it is, because that means then you can probably claw that back with business going on in the future. At the moment, this business has an incredibly poor reputation now. Maybe it may be irreparable now. I mean, if there's a Facebook page named The Victims of Your Business, then you are in serious trouble. Yeah. People make mistakes. And this is the thing I've always judged businesses, and I hope people judge, it's not the mistakes you make, it's how you rectify them and what you do about it. And for her to call her clients obscenities and complain that she's been taken to court, well, no duh, you've taken their money and not provided them with the product that you said you would. Of course, people are going to be upset. Of course, people are going to want their money back if you're not providing what they have paid for. Palming them off with an unedited version of their video with all the bloopers in or whatever is not good enough. It's just not good enough, because part of the package is the fact that you're going to edit them. You're not paying for the time on the day just about. We always say this is what folk don't see. It's about your expertise in editing, and obviously you shot something for a certain reason for that to be edited in a certain way, and that's your expertise. That's what people are paying for. It's for me, it's not the fact that things have gone awry, it's the way she's dealt with it, which I find wrong, personally, because we've all made mistakes, and we've all done things. Oh no, but it's where your priorities lie, I guess.
Looking at it online, looking at searching the company name online, there are other companies that seem to be based in America with the same company name, Wallflower. The one they're finding in Kent does say on Google that it is permanently closed, and it's got 3.6 stars out of 45 Google reviews. So she'd got some good reviews. Now, you've explained very well, of part of it and the things that you've got to look out for just common sense stuff, really. But let's also consider it from the videographer's point of view for a moment.
Okay.
Now the videographer here obviously has taken on all this work, hasn't and has become, as I said, overwhelmed by it, and is obviously didn't want to let her customers down. Okay, she didn't go into this thinking, I'm going to take their money, I'm going to film all these weddings. She was probably getting all these bookings saying, great, I've got this booking, I've booked that, I've booked that, I'm almost fully booked for this year, I've got that, and then realised that she had all of the work to do. Now, and then realising that she couldn't do it. Now, that's obviously affected her mentally. It must have done, because I don't care, okay, we can say that, we can argue the fact that, she's put this video, I've not seen it online, where she's used obscenities or something, and so she, about her clients or whatever. How true that is or not, I don't know, but it must be. It was on the BBC site.
On the BBC,
referred to it. That's right. Yeah. So my take on it is that she obviously didn't want to do that, and it's like what was it? The Greg Wallace story. Do you know when he put out these videos of himself? These messages that he did, and then he regretted putting those messages out. He did those in the moment, and it's probably something that she did in the moment as well. Now, she's going to be suffering because of this, financially, legally, all of that, but mentally, where does she go from here? And I'd seen some Facebook content as well, and in actual fact, I have to be honest, that's what a lot of professionals seem to be saying. Hey, let's step back a minute and let's just see it from her point of view and where she's got herself into. It's not fair on the clients. Okay, at the end of the day, the client's needs and what they paid for should have been met regardless. And even if she'd lost a lot of money doing that, she should have seen those clients through. And there is a thing where she may not have been able to afford to do that. She should have figured out a way where she could have come to a deal with, say, a video editor, said, I've got all these wedding videos to edit. I know you normally charge me X amount, but if I give you all of these weddings, would you do me a special deal? And that person might have been appreciative of work. So there's possibly ways around it. Now, she may have done all of that. I don't know. She
didn't have to give all the weddings over either. She could have given a portion of them just to lighten her load. She doesn't have to give every single one. Exactly.
That's right. Yeah. But for us, Mark, we've also been talking about this recently, haven't we? And this and our own work life. Let's not say work-life balance for it. Let's just say our own work for a moment. We're very fortunate that we are both very busy photographers. Okay, we are fortunate in that we do have work. We've done that through a lot of hard work over the years, and that's what's kept us busy. But that doesn't mean to say because we've been busy the last few years that we're going to be busy this year and we're going to be busy next year. It means that we have to constantly keep on putting the time and effort in to keep busy, when we're self-employed. And that's not really what I want to go in as far as here's what we do to do that. But I wanted to sort of go into the amount of work that we have to deal with, that you and I have to deal with. You have your portraits that you do for a lot of the week. Okay, there's graduations, and that means traveling all over the country and staying away from home for several days, a week or 2 weeks at a time. Okay, and then there's all the other bits, the filling bits that you do in between. Okay, jobs. I'm not talking about editing or that. I'm talking about actual shoots. For myself, that I have the photography video company that I run. Within that, we have our weddings, we do our commercial side of the business, and also obviously run the school as well. And then in addition to that, there is all the graduations as well. And that's a heck of a lot to actually take on. In addition to that, we also have the podcast, which has now been going since since December 2019, would you believe?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I haven't been doing it for that long. I think I started lockdown time, I think. Yeah.
Few months afterwards, wasn't it? Okay.
And it's taken a lot of different forms.
It's changed. Yeah, it's changed. We've adapted. We've moved with the way we've managed to with our own schedule. And that's one of the things that we're going to be doing now with the podcast. We initially, when we first started out, we were doing it, from what I remember, as a bi-weekly episode. Okay, so it was every 2 weeks. Then we moved it to once a week. Then we moved back to bi-weekly. And then we came back to weekly because we had to try and sort of work out how we can actually make it work.
Yeah.
We've now, looking at everything that we have got going on at the moment and our schedule for the rest of this year, we've decided to move the podcast, rather than from being a weekly release, going on to a monthly release, which should allow us some breathing space. And that's what we're basically trying to do. We're trying to allow us to improve what we do and give ourselves some breathing space in all of the different fields of everything that we're trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, again, it's just making sure that we're not running ourselves ragged, because we love doing this podcast, and I hope you guys enjoy listening to it as well. I mean, we do have quite a few listeners, so it is really cool to do. But we just want to make sure that we're keeping the content good, I guess. We don't want to just put something out just for the sake of it, because we got to do it, once a week. So yeah. It's just, and this is a sort of a thing about just managing your workflow. I mean, we're not life coaches or anything, guys. So yeah.
Oh, if you want a life coach, go to a
BMI breakfast meeting.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we'll go to one of those meetings, and they'll all be life coaches. Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
but
it does make me laugh. Sorry, but I was going to say it does make me laugh when some. And I'm not knocking all of them, right? But when you
no, we're not knocking life coaches, by the way.
When you get these life coaches, and some of them are incredibly young as well, okay, and they'll say, "I'll show you how to, how I can tell you to manage your work-life balance."
Yeah. But no, we're not knocking life coaches. I mean, the fact of the matter is, I just said we are not life coaches, so we are not qualified to say how you should manage your work balance. But I think it's really just down to the fact that if you haven't got enough time to do the things you need to do, you do need to sort of rearrange things, and maybe drop things, and drop the things that you don't want to do. Now, we didn't want to drop anything, so we decided that this is the way we go. I hope you guys are all in tune with that. I hope that's all good with you, especially our patrons. But yeah, that's the plan, basically.
Yeah, but I think what it does is that when we made the decision to go monthly, I was able to take a big sort of deep breath and go, oh, do you know what? That feels better, and and I don't want to, as I said, I don't want to make this. What we're definitely not going to do is sort of say to you, we're now going to give you tips and advice on how to get a better work-life balance.
Yeah.
What I'd like to do.
We're not qualified to do that.
No, what I'd like to do is for both of us to give it the listeners an indication mark of what we do and how and what we do ourselves and how we manage what we think works for us. Okay. And let's start with the podcast for a moment. For those people that out there that actually do a podcast themselves, or you'll realize that the amount of work that actually goes into a podcast, it's not just get together, stick a couple of mics up, record it, and that's it. We're done. Obviously, we're now on video on YouTube, so it means that the video has got to be done, put together. It's got to be put on the different platforms. There's all the little social media bits that you have to do, and in addition to that, you want to try and make some money from that as well. So you have to try and get sponsors. You need to try and get patrons. You want to try and think, well, the amount of time and effort I'm putting into it, I'm actually gaining something from it. Now, this has not been a money-making venture for us. Okay.
No, I think it was kind of like, if it made money, then great.
Yeah. Okay.
That wasn't really our primary motive for doing this, of course.
Well, when we first started it, we started it before COVID, before we knew COVID was going to happen. And then in actual fact, COVID hit probably about 2 months after we started it. And that changed the dynamic of the podcast and the reason for doing the podcast. In actual fact, during COVID, it gave the whole team something to do to get together, and it really helped us mentally. But I know for a fact that it helped a lot of people out there listening, and for that reason, we've carried on with it, and it's certainly something that we don't want to stop. So we're going to just move it, as we were saying, once a month. Because of that. So one of the things that we are doing is just releasing ourselves and letting and just adapting something rather than just dropping it.
Yeah.
So for Mark, you've got your portraits, haven't you? That goes on for a lot of the week, and then in between you've got graduation. So how do you deal with that and your time and your editing that you've got to do in between all of that?
Well, yeah, the editing part is always the most difficult thing, which is why I have a tiny bit of sympathy with the lady that we were talking about with the videographers.
I do.
I am notoriously slow at editing. I've never been overly quick. I probably go into a bit too much, I think, but that's just the way I am. But I have to plan that into what I'm doing, and it is tricky to do it all. But again, it's just about planning. I mean, in the summer, it does go crazy because that's the height of the wedding season as well. We have a few big graduations at that point, as well as doing all the other stuff. So it's. I try and keep it into not 9 to 5, because no one works a 9 to 5 anymore. But you know what I mean. I try and do that 8 to 10 hour day. And I try and keep it all within that. That is what I try to do. Am I successful all the time? No. But when I'm looking at my diary and when I'm looking at things and people want to book in, I won't just... And it's kind of the opposite of what people say. People tell you when you're self-employed, you just need to say yes to everything, don't you? But actually, when you're in the position that you've got work, and I'm in a fortunate position, I'm not, that it is fine to say, actually, I can't do that day, because I've got X, Y, and Z to do. If you can fit it in, always say yes, but don't run yourself ragged, because you'll end up being in a position like this lady videographer will be in. Diary is key, and also you do need a bit of time for yourself as well. If you've been working every weekend for 3 to 4 weekends and you got a free weekend, keep it free. Those sorts of things are also important. And it's easy to say, but that's what I try and do. I try and keep the working hours I had when I was PAYE. I try and keep that into my self-employment. I have a lunch break, for example. I give myself a lunch break. I like I say, am I successful with that 100% of the time? Of course not. But it's always good to have that aim, I think. How about yourself, Ken?
It's very similar in that I've gone through the periods when I was working late into the evening, and working silly hours and that type of thing. But going back sort of several years ago now, it's been quite a few years. I really tried to stop that. I'm lucky because I can either work from home or I can work from an office. And one of the things I've always tried not to do was to bring work home, where I could avoid it. So, and what I didn't do, what I always did was I would prefer to get up much earlier and try and be finished by like a sensible time. Sometimes that sensible time, let's say sensible time is 5:30. That sensible time is sometimes stretched to 7:30. Okay, right. Yeah. But it certainly wouldn't be right. Well, I'll go home and do it. I'll go home and have dinner with the wife, or sit and watch a few films or whatever. We'll watch a film and it's got now to 11 o'clock and I've still got a load of work to do. I'll do it now and I'm working till 2 o'clock in the morning. Okay, so I don't do that.
No.
Okay, I will. I basically figured out that if you work, when I email clients, okay, and those clients work for a company, okay, in other words, they're not self-employed individuals. Those people will reply back generally during office hours. They don't expect an email back Monday to Friday. Just freelancers. Yeah. Why do we feel the need that, it's 9 o'clock in the evening, I better reply back to this email? I've got a load of emails I'll reply back to. It's 2 o'clock in the morning.
I don't. I don't.
Right?
If it's out of working hours and someone emails me or WhatsApps me, I leave it till the next day. I'm like, no. It's out of hours now.
That's right. Yeah. Okay. So, and I think more and more people are probably trying to do that more so. Yeah. But we do you can very easily get into that situation of just working all the time and replying back all the time. Yes, you can keep a track of emails. You can keep a track of your messages and know what's going on, but it doesn't mean that you have to reply back to them sort of straight away. You can also schedule emails as well. You can type an email at 10 o'clock at night and schedule it to send at 11 o'clock the following day. Okay, so that's sometimes good practice. But this is going into how we deal with things. We're not saying that this is going to work for everyone. And I will always come back to this one story that a photography mentor who's exceptional, I must say, first of all, had said to me, in fact, it was Jeff Brown, okay, photographer's mentor. I'll mention him, okay. He's a really good friend of the show, and we get on great. But there was something that he's told me a lot of stuff and taught me a lot of things that I implemented, and great. There was something that he did say to me that I didn't agree with, and I wasn't going to implement it. And that was my fail. I say failing, okay, and this is where it's easy to say was on LinkedIn. I don't use LinkedIn.
No, I don't.
I've gone through phases of it, and I should have done over the years, but I don't, because I just didn't have the time to do it. So when I was talking to Jeff, he was sort of giving me an example of how he does it, how he gets up really early in the morning, something like 4 or 5 o'clock or something. He goes to the gym, comes back, then he'll catch up with all his messages, do his LinkedIn stuff and whatever. Then he'll have a coffee or something. It was something like that. So he said to me, why don't you just get up an hour earlier every morning? I was thinking, well, I'm already getting up at something like 7. Okay. And I don't want to get up at 6 thinking, right, I'm getting up at 6 o'clock now to do LinkedIn. Okay. Yeah. Because this came from my wife, and I hadn't actually thought about it at the time, but she says one of the things that she values most is in the mornings is that when we wake up, I'll go down and bring us both a cup of coffee in bed, and we'll watch news or something on TV for half an hour, 40 minutes, something like that, however much time we've got. And she said that's one of the time that she values the most. And I hadn't never thought of that at that time until she said that to me. And I thought, for that reason alone, I'm not going to get up an hour earlier to do LinkedIn. I would just let LinkedIn drop, or I'll try and schedule it in somehow. Okay, so it's trying to take too much on. So the biggest thing I would say for me, Mark, is that when I try and sort of have that work thing, is exactly the same as you, is to try and just work normal hours where I can. I mean, I started working at 8 o'clock this morning, and I'm teaching this evening, and that is from 5:45 until 9 o'clock. So I'm not going to be home until about 9:30. I've got a long day.
I mean, that is a long day.
Okay, that is a long day. But at the same time, I know that my other days aren't really like that. There are certain days that are going to be long.
Well, I mean, it's not about necessarily the time you get up personally. I mean, during the week, I probably get up a little later, but that's because I'm consistently working until about 8 or 9 o'clock in the evening. And this is and if I get up at 8 o'clock in the morning, I mean, that's a long day. If I'm, and sometimes I have to do that, if I have got something to do, I do have to do that. But I do try and go, well, look, no. I'm finishing work at, let's say clients leave. If everything runs on time and there's no 2-year-olds running around or whatever it is, I'm leaving at 8 o'clock in the evening. The reason I have to do the late ones is because that's a prime slot, and that's when people, people who are employed finish work, and it's a good time to get the people in. But generally they don't overrun. So I might leave at 8:30, 8:45, And that means I get home at around maybe 9, 9:15. I then got to have dinner. So that's about 10 o'clock. And I don't go to bed until about midnight, maybe half midnight. So therefore I want my 8 hours sleep. So my alarm will go off at, I don't know, 7:30 or 8 o'clock or something. And maybe I get up at 8:30 or 9. Do you know what I mean? So that sounds like a lie-in, 9 o'clock. But actually, it's not, because I've been working till quite late. But it's still that hours, it's still a set amount of hours that I'm working. It's just shifted from, a couple of hours later. And that's what it is.
And a couple of other things that I do, and I've done this for a long time, is I do outsource some of the work, like my editing, for example. Going back years ago, I used to do my own Photoshop, and I was never really that great at it. And then Robert, who started the podcast with us, who worked with me for a number of years, took on the editing work, and he learned it, became really good at it. And because of that, I stopped doing any editing, really. I wasn't doing it. So I lost my editing skill. So I don't really edit now. I now outsource editing work. Now, I could actually say, okay, well, I'm paying other people to do that. Why don't I say that I could make X amount just by doing it myself? First of all, do you know what? I do have the time to do it, but that would mean me working in the evenings and at weekends, okay? So that means to say, no, actual fact, if I'm working, say, a normal office hours day, let's say 9 till 6, then I don't have the time to do that, so I have to outsource that to somebody else.
And that's included in your pricing, right? And that's going
to a certain extent.
Yeah,
to a certain extent, because my pricing for certain jobs can only go to a certain amount.
Yes, of course. But that is, I mean, let's say your weddings. I mean, again, going back to the story, the videographer.
Yeah.
I mean, £800. I'm guessing that's a full day's wedding, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I mean, £800 is cheap, right?
Of course, that's right. Yeah, and what? And an editing time as well.
Editing time as well. So that's cheap. I mean, how much would you charge for that?
Well, you're looking at a starting price of 1,500.
Yeah. Okay.
That's a base price.
And that's a base price. Okay.
And it can go up from there.
And I'm guessing because it's Jord that does the
so Jordan does the vast majority of filming. Yeah.
And so you pay him for that, right?
Yeah. So he gets paid for the filming and the editing.
A part of that £1,500 is going to Jordan for doing the editing, right?
That's right.
And that's it. And this is another thing that when you're starting out, and this is something that to remember is really thinking about things like that. So when I charge what I charge my family portraiture to an untrained eye, I thought, wow, that's expensive. A lot of people will say that, but actually, what you're forgetting is, well, I pay the lab to make the frames. I don't make the frames myself. I don't have the time. I don't have the skills, and quite frankly, I don't have the inclination either.
That's just it. Yeah.
I am not a framer. I am not a printer. Okay, I am a photographer. So I outsource that to the lab. Now, let's say I've got a package which is around £1,500, £700 of that goes to the lab. You know, that's it. And then of course you've got to think about rent, and of course I got to make money out of it. That's why I'm here. You know, and that's the. I mean, I've used those figures. There were rough figures there. They're not exact, sure. but that's generally the what happens. And this lady has obviously not thought of that.
That's right. Yeah, or maybe she just got in, and she hadn't thought about it, and then she got herself into a situation where she was getting these bookings, kept taking them, money was coming in, and then thought, oh well, you know, and I'll deal with it afterwards, you know.
Yeah.
So as I was saying, that I think the biggest thing I've done is I have outsourced work, and I know a lot of people will think, well, you know, I'm losing that money. I could do that editing. I could do that. I could do this. But that's where you have to draw the line somewhere if you want to basically have some sanity. Okay. And be able to, like for me, I'll work out, I'll go to the gym, I'll sit and watch football, and I'll do the things that I want to do, so, you know, as and when I can, and help out around the house, although my wife might have something to comment on that.
I was going to say,
and I should be helping around the house a lot more. Okay. Yeah. Joking aside, right. You know, and I should be, you know, I should be cooking dinner a lot more often, you know. And on that note, but on that note, and I've said this many times, I can't do what I do without the support of my wife. So I have got support. So you have to, if you do have a partner and you know, whether you live together or whether, you know, or whether you don't live together, but you know, you're still partners, then you have to basically both come to an agreement and an understanding. You know, but again, I want to jump back to that outsourcing thing is don't be afraid of sort of paying other people to do things, even if that means that you end up earning less, and see how it affects you. If you can still get by and pay your bills, and you can do all of those things, and in to a certain extent do the things that you want to do, and then get people to that, because you have more energy to do other things. And when you do that, you end up creating more work and other work, because you've got the time to do that. So that's one of the things that's made it. That's one of the things that's made a huge difference to me. Is one is, as I said, is not taking work home. Secondly, is outsourcing work as well. And thirdly, sort of final thing, is same with both of us, Mark, is trying to just work like normal hours. You know, in a day, and that's not always the case.
It's
sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. But when you do have to work. Yeah, when you do have to work late, like I have to work late tonight, I've got a long day. It doesn't bother me at all. You know, I'm not going to be working until 9 o'clock every single night this week. No. And then I carry that work over into the weekend. Now, the weekends where we don't have weddings, I'm doing my absolute best not to do any work at all. And sometimes, you know, you just get that urge. It's just nagging in the back of your mind. I ought to do this, I ought to do that, I ought to do this, I ought to do that. you know, and when I've been doing weddings for so many years and not had the luxury of having weekends, it's even now I find it difficult to adapt to when I have got free weekends. You know, I am getting more and more. I'm getting more and more used to that, and learn to let things move things around and adapt it as we are with the podcast. As we are with the podcast. So
absolutely. I hope you found that informative, guys. Our next, we're going to try and do it the first Thursday of every month. Now that might be here and there. We're not being exact on that, but it's going to be roughly once a month. We do plan to have, we've got some ideas for what we're going to do. I think the episodes are going to be slightly longer, and we've got some ideas and things that we're going to put into it. So it's quite exciting. I hope you enjoy the new episode that we're going to do for next one. Just do a quick shout out for our patrons. So we have got Frank Case, Amira Zainab, Carl Sherville, Rob Percy, Craig Chuck, Emily Brown, and Nick Payne. Thank you so much for your support.
Thank you, guys. Let the sun keep shining.
Yes, you do look like you're on the sunbed there, Cam. I
know. It feels great. And we will. You'll hear us or see us in about a month.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Bye for now, guys.
Cheers, guys.